Okay, so this is the haptics control room for the Dimple now. We've set up 3 haptic devices. So we have the Phantom Omni here. We have the Novent Falcon here. Can you see it in the video?
Mm-hmm.
We have the MPV Freedom 6S here.
Oh, okay, same. Pointing down.
So this is the Novent Freedom 6S Omni. Okay. This computer, this one right here, is set up to use all 3 devices. So in order to choose which device you want to use, you just plug in the one you want, and you make sure the other ones are unplugged. And then when you run Dimple, it will auto-detect whichever device it finds. Well, first of all, you should show from the start. This computer has been set up with an account called IDMIL. So you log into it with the IDMIL password, which is VICON. And you can log in, and then you just get the Dimple icon on the desktop. And you have a few test programs for the Phantom, test and configuration programs. You have a test program for the Falcon, and you have a test and configuration diagnostic program for the Freedom.
Now, is there any order as far as turning the computer on?
No. You just turn on the computer and log in.
Okay, and the devices are off at that point?
Yeah, devices should generally be off when you're not using them.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt to leave them plugged in, but yeah, usually I turn them off. Okay, so I'll just start with the Novent, I guess. So the Novent, so we can plug it in. The Novent connects to the computer using USB. So there's the Novent Falcon. So you just plug in the power, and when you turn it on, the Falcon needs to have some firmware downloaded to it. So I set up the computer to do that automatically when it detects it. So you want to plug the power in first, and then plug in the USB. And then the computer then auto-detects it, and then when this LED turns green, which it just did, it means that it's downloaded the firmware to the device. If that doesn't happen, then when you run the software, it will do it automatically, but I just made it do that to speed up the start time. Okay, so then when you double-click on Dimple, then it should detect the Falcon, which it did. And then if we move this around a bit, we'll see that the cursor here on the screen is related to what I'm doing on the Falcon. So then that's working. You hit escape to leave that. And I'll just demonstrate now the Phantom. So I'll just turning this off and unplugging it. And then the Phantom can be connected by finding the cable labeled Omni, which goes to here and connects to the back of the device. The Omni is connected to the computer by a FireWire cable. Unplugging the power is sufficient, but sometimes I unplug the FireWire cable. You have to connect it to the FireWire PCI Express card, which is in the computer, which you can find on the back. So we'll plug this in and make sure it's all connected, and then you can see a blue light flashing on there, so you know that it's turned on and then it's communicating with the computer. Then you can just put the stylus in there and it auto-calibrates. So you can run the Phantom configuration program, and this allows you to select Omni, and then you can see that it finds it on the FireWire port. You can also choose a desktop machine. We have the Phantom desktop, which can also be plugged into the parallel port of this machine. But it's broken right now, so I'm not going to bother demonstrating it. So anyways, when you select Omni here and you see that it shows up with the serial number, then it should be okay. You can run the Phantom test program and then hit calibrate, and then you'll see that it's able to read the encoders of the device. You can also test the forces that the device can exert. Like this, you can see that that's working. So that's the Phantom test program, and then if that's working, then probably Dimple should work. So you double-click Dimple, and then we can see that the cursor is there. You notice I have to start moving the cursor around before Dimple starts picking it up, because Dimple actually calibrates its workspace according to your movements. So you always want to just move it around a bit. So that works. So we'll just unplug the power from the Phantom, from the Phantom Omni. We'll plug in the power cord for the Freedom 6S. Now the Freedom 6S is a bit of a more complicated device in terms of the hardware setup, just because it's got very powerful amplifiers and complicated kind of hardware setup. So this power cord goes to the back of these amplifier boxes. So I'll just plug those in. There's 2 switches on the front of the amplifier boxes. One of them turns on the sensors of the device, and that has to be turned on for the device to work. The motors is the other switch, and you don't have to turn those on until you want to use the motors. So you can just turn that on, and then you can run you can just run Dimple and it should detect the device. So it's working. So we can see that it knows where the position of the device is. If I run the Dimple test patch, the pure data patch, click connect and then bang to create box here, then we look down here and it will create the objects. And then you can see that I can actually interact with this box in Dimple using the freedom. I'm feeling no forces right now though, because the motors are not turned on. So if I just reach down here and turn on this switch, then turned on the motors of the device, and now when I interact with this object in Dimple, it's producing forces, and you can hear some small oscillations that the device makes because the stiffness is slightly too high. But in any case, you can see that it's working. So, just for your knowledge, if you're using the Freedom, there's also a configuration panel which has some configuration about which PCI cards it's using. The PCI cards are mounted in the computer, so you don't need to touch them unless you're changing computers. There's a couple of features here about power detection and stuff like that, which is used to turn off the motors if the sensors are not turned on. Generally, I wouldn't change anything here if you can help it. It's set up correctly for this computer. The Free Diag program is a diagnostic program for the Freedom 6S. You can use it to check that the sensors are all working, so you can see the sensor dials are moving as I move the device around. You can use it to check that the joint angles are what you expect. These are calculated from the sensor readings. And then you can also test the motors individually in the torque panel here. You can set up a virtual wall on each axis or joint by making it active here. If I turn this on, you can see that now there's a wall on the x-axis, for example. Or here now there's a wall on the y-axis here. So that's that program. And then it also comes with a little simulation for testing the 6th degree of freedom capabilities of the Freedom. So you can see that there's this stick object and a ball object, and you can touch it and feel the corners of the ball and everything. So that allows you to test the full capabilities of the Freedom 6S, which, by the way, Dimple doesn't fully take advantage of. Dimple only supports 3 DOF, but it works fine with the Freedom as well. So that's it. That's how you use these haptic devices. And for using Dimple, I suggest you check this help file. I put a help file on the computer that talks about how this computer has been set up. And then you can also check the IDMIL website, idmil.org/software/Dimple, which has some information on Dimple. And you can also check the GitHub account, which is github.com/idmil/Dimple. And this has a README file here. And also, if you go to doc/messages, then you get all the documentation on what OSC messages Dimple can use. So if you want to see an example of a pure data patch, just check the Dimple test patch, and this shows how to create messages that tell Dimple how to do things, and also how to receive messages back from Dimple so that you can do audio with it. Otherwise, check. There might be some Maximus P patches out there, and there's some super collider work out there that's used Dimple, so there's a few examples. Otherwise, just email me, steven.sinclair@mail.mcgill.ca, and we can talk about whatever you want to do with it. So that's it.
Great. Thanks, Steve.